So in this video, I am going to explain how my spiritual interests and how I ended up discovering that I was a light worker, and just basically how a bunch of different jobs, didn't work out for me. The first job that I'm going to tell you about is, I'm going to say the summer of 2008. Basically, before I went to college, I was, working for about 3 years, just a string of dead-end jobs over and over and over again, and it would seem like most of them I would just get fired from. Like back in 2008, the summer of 2008, I worked for a telemarketing place for a few months, and then they ended up firing me because I didn't sell enough magazines. And then I worked at this clothing store, and I was working there for about a month. And the boss was a real crotch stain. She was like really, rude. And she's like, okay. So I was like working there, like full time for like a month. And I don't know, she's just like really weird and everything. And in fact, the day before I got fired, I like covered somebody else's shift, and she said, oh, you did a great job. And she gave me a high five and everything like that. Next day I'm at work, and she's like, oh, I want you to go around and dust everything. I'm like, okay, sure. And I, went around and like cleaned the store, and then like basically at the end, I went over back to her, and then she said I didn't dust right, and she just like made me leave. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what? That's really weird. And then I basically, about a month after that, I got a job where I was working at a bakery for about a year. So this was October of 2008. And I got hired at a bakery, and I was working there for about a year, and I just absolutely could not stand the job. And it was very, very fast paced, and it was very hard work. And I didn't like it at all. And I was really, really irritated and kind of angry. And it was just like they were like, I don't know, it was just way too fast-paced of work. And I worked there for a year, and that's when I decided I absolutely don't want to work in food service anymore. I don't want to work at restaurants anymore. And then I quit exactly 1 year later. So I quit in October of 2009 when I enrolled in college in the fall. And then I got my degree in business administration. I got my degree because I think that it's important for me to do something that's like really useful for people. And basically, when I was in college, I was working a couple of jobs at the mall, and then they just fired me and just said that I didn't learn everything fast enough and blah blah blah. And then one time, and then after that, like when I was still in college, like a year later, I got fired from a restaurant, and I came in, and it was a brand new restaurant, and they just opened, and there were like two people working in there. And I worked there, and then on the third day I came in like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I went over there, and he gave a really weird excuse. The owner, his name was Bob. I came in and everything, then he like, calls me over, and he's like, oh, Jessica, we just need a really, really strong cashier, and you can't work here anymore. So that was just like very bizarre. They didn't even really tell me why they had fired me. And anyway, it was just very frustrating, and I just felt, really insecure with myself, and I felt like I just couldn't do anything right. And then I was in college, and then, like I said in my last video, where I gave an introduction, because I have a video about how I got into tarot and astrology, the psychic was right, because I went to my first tarot reading when I was in college in 2011, and this is like, around the time that I had been through a bunch of, dead-end jobs and everything. And like I said, the card in the past that came up was the 9 of Wands, and that irritates, frustration, not getting along, anger, arguing, and really, really irritated. And those words that are coming out of my mouth now, that's how I felt when I was working at the bakery. And I absolutely knew I was not cut out for restaurant work at all. And so anyway, this psychic just said, well, yeah, something that you've been doing in the past couple years has just been really, really, really irritating to you. And to be honest with you, I don't remember exactly how, and I'm not talking about just from her, but I don't remember exactly how, but I somehow came along, exactly finding out, but I called, psychics, and when I would get, psychic readings and stuff like that, somebody eventually told me, and I ended up finding how, even though I don't know all the details, I don't remember exactly the details, but I kind of got the idea, around 2012, like, that I, I'm here to help people. And I had a psychic tell me over the phone one time that I'm here to help people, and that now that I'm doing more humanitarian work, I am doing, the purpose that I am supposed to be doing. And then actually pretty recently, earlier this year, early in 2017, I was, kind of browsing around in my spiritual interests and blah, 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 blah. And I came across the word Lightworker, and it really described me, because it was just like saying about how people who have grown up in really, really bad, really bad upbringing, and been abused either in relationships before. I've never been physically abused by a relationship, but, either or in childhood. There's a lot of emotional and physical trauma. I was separated from my dad when I was in kindergarten. And, like I said earlier in this video, just a bunch of up and down jobs and no income, and, and just getting really frustrated. And so I kind of looked up the term light worker, and I really got into it, and I'm like, wow, this must be me. This must be part of my spiritual journey. It means that my soul, before I came to this earthly plane, I volunteered to help people, and it just always seems maybe about once a week I will help somebody with something really important. I'll give somebody directions, or one time I helped a blind lady across the road, or I'll help people doing, certain things. Basically, I was kind of getting into, looking into Lightworker, and it really sounded like me and what I've been going through. I had like a different, upbringing, very abusive upbringing. I don't want to say different, but abusive would be the word. Abusive. My mom was very physically and emotionally abusive toward me. She would lose her temper a lot. She wasn't thinking. She's still, to this day, for the last 40 years, she's been popping prescription medication. I had a lot of health problems growing up as a result and everything. Also they were saying something about light workers where in, high school they were picked on and everything like that. That was definitely me. I was not part of the popular crowd at all. And they were talking about how, I just looked up on YouTube and looked up in my own personal research about how a light worker is supposed to go through some really, really heavy trauma. And it means that we are here to help humanity. And I was fired from a whole bunch of jobs and everything like that. And I haven't been fired in at least 5 years, but this is early. When I was in college, I was fired from a couple mall jobs. And then before that, 3 years before that, I was pretty much fired from almost every job that I was working. And like I said, sometimes they would not even give just a weird explanation, or not hide or hair of anything, or just say something like, oh, you weren't cut out for the job, or something like that. And anyway, I kind of I just thought it was really interesting, because I've never really, until recently in the last 6 months, just heard the concept of light worker. And I think that when I was working at a bakery or working telemarketing, I was not on the path to helping humanity. Everything on the YouTube videos and everything that I've been looking up and reading in books and everything, that sounds pretty much like the description, that a light worker would go through a lot of heavy trauma, but we're really here for the greater good of the earth. So I stopped working at, dead-end jobs, and it's, always been, something where I've been, working at, a nonprofit organization or doing, something like that, and volunteering at a community center, and I haven't had any incidents. I haven't had any problems at all with being fired. I thought it was actually really interesting, and that's why I said, I'm really glad that I got into tarot and astrology, because if I hadn't had, people sit down and explain to me word for word to this day, I might still have problems, going to, dead-end jobs and just getting fired, because I didn't really realize that there was a term as Lightworker. Somebody that's supposed to have a really important job, and I am here. Like, before I came to Earth, I signed up, I volunteered on my own to help people, and I didn't really realize that it was a concept, and now I'm, glad that somebody sat down and explained this word for word to me. So anyway, this is my video. I'm talking about being a light worker. I'm talking about the last, 10 years of struggle, and I touched on a little bit of things that I was going through, when I was growing up as a kid and everything. And just how I ended up finding out that I am a light worker. I went through a lot of heavy trauma basically since before I was born, and I did spiritual research on spiritual things, and I found it on the internet, just by Googling it, that, the concept of light worker, that we went through a lot of trauma and a lot of bad things, us personally, and that we have to, walk through fire as a light worker to come to the earthly plane from heaven, when we were souls. And I signed in my soul contract that I would be here to give people advice and give people directions and help people. And so I think that's part of my mission in life, is being a light worker. So this is, my video. And I just want to kind of, give you, kind of let you know what I've been through. And so this video is about how I found out through my own experiences and spiritual study, tarot cards, astrology, things like that, that I'm really here put on earth to help humanity.